Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where Ethiopia has achieved orbit once more, but this time, Valentina has a reasonable chance of survival. Which is great. However, we're not quite ready to return home just yet. So we just passed Periapsis here, and we want to grab as much science as possible. So we're just going to go ahead and warp around here until we get to the Periapsis again. And we will auto-stop our warps with the X Science Here and Now window whenever we enter a new biome that we need an EVA report for. So that's great. We'll warp again. Okay, here's another one. Badlands. We'll keep that. And we will continue our warp. Mountains? Sure. We'll grab that. And we will continue. Anything else? Grasslands? Sure. This is all fine so far. We're about 10 minutes away from Periapsis here. Looks like we're not going to hit too many more biomes. We'll go ahead and grab this EVA report. How many more might we hit? It was already worth doing, that's for sure. We're only about 3 minutes away from Periapsis here, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the time warp, and we're going to go ahead and say that is what we're going to get. Well, we will position ourselves retrograde here as we approach Periapsis. Excellent. And we will need to drop our apoapsis height down. We could probably do it a little more efficiently by going to the apoapsis and dropping it from the Periapsis, but we don't care about this fuel. It's fine. We're going to try to recover this whole thing if we can, I think. I'm pretty sure we can recover the second stage here. So we will go ahead and wait until this Periapsis. I'm going to warp a little further here until we are roughly here, 10 seconds. And we'll go ahead and burn this. So we can now see our Periapsis is down to 68 kilometers. Technically, we are returning now. But we are going to go ahead and bring that down to perhaps 30. 27 is good enough. Okay, so now let's go ahead and warp until we enter the atmosphere. There we go. We're now in the atmosphere. We will go ahead and position ourselves retrograde again before we start getting too much on our re-entry in terms of aerodynamic force. And this will hopefully give Valentina enough skill to be able to lock retrograde, which will make these re-entries much less problematic, shall we say. So we want to bleed off just as much speed as we can. We're coming in to about 27 kilometers Periapsis. This should be plenty smooth of a re-entry. That said, it's not necessarily going to be the cleanest. But we can always gimbal with our engine if we have to. We can do a bit of a re-entry burn. I want to save some fuel for landing, like we did previously, just because I like to land slightly slower. But so far, it's looking great. I am going to move this in case I forget. There we go. Now our decoupler is on top, so we'll just have to manually stage this probably if we decide that we don't want to bring back this stage. And of course the reason we're bringing this back is because it saves us a little bit of money. But if we have to bail on it, it's no big deal. We definitely can do that. So our Periapsis is currently down to about 25 minutes. I'm going to physics warp a bit here. Now physics warp is spooky in the atmosphere. There's no doubt about that. And I'm going to stop it, because I'm not liking where this is putting our actual marker at here. Or rather, where our SAS is sitting. Okay. Yeah, that's better. Now we could do a re-entry burn here, but I'm actually somewhat okay with what we've got going on here. It's a wild Periapsis, but that is not actually accurate because we, of course, have other forces acting on us. So that's fine. You can see here the time to periapsis is not going down very quickly. Less than 1 second per second. So our periapsis height is now down to 22.5 kilometers. And that's great. We should start seeing heating effects here pretty soon, or rather atmospheric effects, as we continue to drop and the atmosphere thickens up. It wants to sit slightly off of retrograde here. Hello, son. We're going to be building, apparently, a mining station for you. I have no idea how that's going to work. That's going to be interesting. Actually, I think that station is just like a power station, isn't it? So we can build, like, ridiculously effective solar panels with a bunch of cooling that you can then dock up to and, like, recharge your batteries or something awkward like that. Something along those lines. Okay, so our periapsis is now down to 15.5 kilometers, and it is dropping quickly. We're still accelerating a little bit here, but we're just now starting to get some atmospheric effects, so that's great. Of course, if we really want to make this easier, then we can just ditch this stage. That would, of course, help tremendously. For now, though, we will just continue bringing back Valentina. I don't really care where we land. Technically, it's more efficient to land closer to the KSC, but this is fine. We do need to start targeting the moon fairly soon. We, of course, need to build a mining station over the moon, which will be interesting. Not anything we haven't done before, of course. Okay, so we are now officially landing, and we are decelerating. That's great. We may want to, at some point, do a re-entry burn here. We do still have 554 meters per second, which is more than enough for our landing burn. So we should probably do something like that. So I'm just waiting at this point until we start seeing heating on the engine, or until we start losing attitude. One or the other. So far, neither of those have happened, and that is great. The longer we delay on this, it's not exactly the better it is the longer we delay on it, right? Because this is a vacuum-optimized engine, but even so, I'd rather burn later than sooner in this descent. Just keeping it retrograde right now, as we continue bleeding off potential energy here. Okay, this is definitely starting to get a little bit spooky on the aerodynamics. But I'm holding it fine for now. Okay, let's begin our burn. There we go. Looking good. We're going to keep 100 meters per second or so in the tank. Good. At this point, we don't necessarily care too much about losing attitude, although this is a big attitude loss. Can we get back to retrograde? I don't think so, but we're bleeding speed very quickly, and we're not going that fast, so this is actually completely fine. Like, I don't actually care about this. The major issue is the potential of that Science Junior. We'll collect everything in the storage unit, but even if the Science Junior blows up, we're fine. And we're completely okay at this point. That was the correct time to do the re-entry burn. Excellent. So we're going to be able to launch our drogue chutes quite soon. Are we out of power? No, we're not, but we don't really have much for attitude. The drogue chutes will fix that. We'll grab our crew report, our temperature scan while flying high, and we will go ahead and collect those. And an additional one. Excellent, and we'll collect those. Drogue chutes out. That'll pull us back to retrograde. Perfect. All good. All according to plan. Fantastic. Our main can go ahead and go out now. And let's not hit the spacebar again. That would be, problematic if we did. I'd like to do an EVA report. We're going a little quick for that. And we're already in flying low, so we may as well wait until we get a little closer and our chutes start opening. SAS does not need to be on at this point. The parachutes will give us plenty of attitude control. Excellent. That is completely fine. There go the drogue chutes deploying, pulling us down to about 40 meters per second. And let's go ahead and physics warp on down until we get to the main chute deploy. There we go. And now we will go ahead and have Valentina EVA. We'll grab an EVA report. It is a precarious situation. That is correct. And we'll go ahead and collect all of that. Fantastic. And warp to the ground. Or not quite to the ground, but very close to it. Gonna want to cushion this a little bit with our remaining fuel. We don't have much of that, of course. Okay. And let's just slow it right on... Actually, that was a little early. Let's just slow it right on down here. And there we go. Beautiful. Didn't even lose the engine. That's what we like to see. So we'll go ahead and grab all of the science that we can. Valentina EVA. Grab that EVA report. And of course, we completed this contract. Got us some money. That's great. As well as a little science. We'll hop Valentina back in, and we'll recover that. Perfect. Okay, so with that being done, the question now is, how much science did we gain? The answer is a lot. Actually, yeah, 107.2. That's a lot of science for right now. Valentina did indeed get promoted. That's great. And we may want to go for, heavy rocketry, giving us access to the Skipper, the Bobcat, Pollux. Sure. The Torch is, I think, a ReStock Plus engine that I'm not familiar with. That said, having access to external fuel ducts would be great, and the T-800. So we're going to grab that. Excellent. Now let's look at what we've got available for contracts. A flyby of the moon. Yeah, that is something that we could do. That is definitely something that we could do. Now, I do want to go into the admin building, and I want to work on perhaps a fundraising campaign. I wouldn't mind this. Can we go beyond 25% right now, I think is a cap? Yeah, that's okay. So let's go ahead and set this up. I want more funds right now. Reputation, I don't really care so much about reputation in this game. So that's great. Now, any other contracts that we want here? Not particularly, and that's okay. For now, I wouldn't necessarily mind upgrading the tracking station. That's pretty expensive. I also wouldn't necessarily mind upgrading mission control. That's relatively cheap. That does give us flight planning, which is a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. And then the VAB here, that's 225k. We don't have the cash for that currently, so we're still going to be limited by the 30-part limit. So let's go ahead and open up the Free India Mark III. And we need to make a few changes here. Now, I want to do a simulated run here. And of course, the rules for a simulated run is that they are revertible, but they can't exactly be utilized per se. So I want to try this with simply 2 fins on these sides. Okay, that's definitely not going to work. 3 fins? 3 fins. Right about here. So this is a simulated flight. This will be reverted. Any way we do this. I just want to see exactly how this flies through the lower atmosphere. So let's take a look. Let's simulate. Off we go. And let's see how this maneuvers. So we're going to, of course, bring this up to around 20 or 30 meters per second. Let's sit at 30 for now. And okay. That's a lot of spin. That is a lot of spin. And I hate it. Yep, we're going to revert that back to vehicle assembly. And that is a good experiment. Okay. So next up, we're going to see what it's like with 4 slightly lower. Okay, this is still experimental. This is still going to be a reversion. Whoops. Okay. KSP stopped responding there just as I sniffed and hit the mute button. Wonderful. Thanks, KSP. Apologize for that. Need to get in the habit of clicking on OBS first. That doesn't happen if I do it that way. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and launch this. And once again, we're going to see how this feels with a slightly lowered group of fins. At around 30 meters per second, just to get the feel of it. That is reasonably functional. How are we doing with our control surfaces if we flatten out all the way in this thick atmosphere? Honestly, for a lack of engine gimbaling, that's not terrible. Like, this is fairly controllable. We can get over to here, which is quite a ways off of prograde, and then just pull the prograde marker straight up, something like this. Yeah, this isn't awful. So again, this was always going to be reverted. Now that we know this is fine. We can take these tanks and condense them down into a single, or actually into a pair of T-800s. So we'll put in a pair of T-800s. That will save us money, and that will also save us a couple of parts. So that's great. And then this here, we could think about maybe putting this to a T-400. What would that do to our thrust to weight? It seems like that ruins our thrust to weight ratio. 1.19? That's kind of doable, actually. Yeah, that's kind of doable. Now, is this thing going to get us a moon flyby? Yes. At what level of survivability on the re-entry is the question. We do have flight planning, so that is a big, big upgrade, of course. We can get this thing into orbit fairly easily. We have barely any tonnage to spare. We do have parts to spare. And this only costs us 14.5K to launch. That's really not bad. I wouldn't necessarily mind. Like, the Reliant doesn't have gimbaling, right? That's what we're using. Yeah, we're using the T-30 Reliant right now. The Valiant is far weaker of a lifter. The swivel is not quite strong enough. If we put a swivel on here, this would be so much better. But it would completely lack the thrust to weight ratio. Unless we dropped a little bit of fuel. Which I'd kind of prefer not doing. We're going to use a non-gimbaling engine. I don't like doing that. But this will be okay. Now, weight-wise, we appear to be completely fine here. And I'm okay with that. The extra fuel in the fuel tank should be pretty close to enough to get us a moon flyby. The question is, what about the return velocity? We'll just have to be careful with our flyby, right? I'm pretty sure. So let's just go ahead and save this. This is not a dramatic change, so I'm not gonna up the mark number. All we did was we swapped out these fuel tanks. This fuel tank was added, and we moved the fins down. So I'm not going to call that a massive increase to the rocket. This one, by the way, is not a simulated flight. So we are, of course, not going to be reverting this no matter what happens. So we're going to take this on up. Valentina is here. She now has the ability to lock prograde and retrograde, which will help us tremendously. So up we go, and we will just have to see how this works. We're going to go into orbit, and then we're going to do some maneuver planning, and we will see if we manage to get to a moon flyby here. I suspect that we can, but we'll see. Okay, so we'll start a small turn here, pitching downrange very minorly. Not super okay with our current heading. That's better. That's much better. And now we'll just mark prograde for now. And this will start a very, very slight turn. I do want to change our heading, though. I want to change our heading up. Oh my, that's quite an oscillation. Please stop that, SAS. Valentina, I don't know what you're doing, but I don't like it. Okay. Go ahead and lock prograde now. Actually, it fixed our heading. You know what? I'll take it. But we're just going to sit here for right now because our heading is going much more aggressive than we need to. We are not very high right now, and we're moving quite fast. We are turning very, very aggressively here. So I'm just going to hold this position for right now, and we're going to try to push our apoapsis up a bit. Our apoapsis is not as high as I'd like it to be given our current fuel levels. Okay, we are pushing up through the atmosphere fairly nicely here. We're up to 24 kilometers in our apoapsis, and we've got another 600 meters per second here. We're getting a lot of horizontal speed because I was being pretty aggressive with this, and that's okay. We're just going to continue pushing up on our apoapsis. It's getting faster and faster. We are burning off the remainder of this stage. We're almost into space, but we didn't quite get there. I'm not too shocked by that, considering that we did not have the extra, or that we added the extra fuel. So this is not too shocking. But now we are at 75 kilometers, and we're going to start coasting. May as well have Valentina point prograde. Okay, so from here, we will go ahead and... Did I not enable flight planning? I feel like... Oh, we have to upgrade mission control and the tracking station, don't we? Yeah, that's what it is. That's okay. We'll get into orbit, and then we'll do that. Okay, Valentina. Let's get you up there. I'm not entirely sure if we have the DV that we need. After we get to orbit, we'll make sure. We are going to have to upgrade the tracking station, and I can't remember how much that costs. Might be interesting. So we're about 1 minute to apoapsis. I'm not going to burn anything until we are in space and getting the full efficiency from this vacuum engine. I did have to burn off a little bit of fuel to get us the vertical climb that we needed, but that did also get us quite a lot in terms of the... I'm just trying to fix our heading a little bit here, but in terms of the horizontal speed. So we're going to go ahead and burn this, and I'm just pulling the heading up a little bit here. There we go. That should be good. And let's see if we get enough. This is actually looking great on the time to apoapsis here. I'm very happy about this. This timing is good. Our apoapsis is going up faster than I would like, to be sure. But that's okay. Now, this is not dramatic changes to our previous orbital rocket. I'm just mostly trying to see just how much DV we have after we reach this orbit before we determine whether we want to take Valentina down here or not. We'll grab the Mystery Goo observation, and we'll collect everything up here. That's great. We may, because this was our first time gathering that in orbit, we may just want to bring her back at this point. We're about 15 seconds from apoapsis, and I'm going to go ahead and burn this. Yep, this is the time that we need to do this, for sure. Well, at least as close as we're going to get without having mission planning available. Excellent. So we are definitely going to be stopping this burn right now, and we're going to burn it again at around 5 seconds. This is not the most efficient way to do it. Can do it much better with mission planning, but this is close eclipse. Okay, this looks good. So let's just get off into orbit. There we go. Eccentricity, pretty good. Inclination, not so good. And we will hop back to the Space Center. We've got about 671 meters per second, so we didn't actually have all that much extra, but that's mostly because I took an inefficient ascent profile. I was way too aggressive on that for our thrust to weight. So that's okay. The tracking station upgrade is 150k. That would leave us with 761 in terms of our cash. Not so great. Not so great at all. These focused observational surveys are fine to do if you are going to use like a plane. Not so fine to do with a rocket. Suborbital spaceflight on Kerbin and orbit around Kerbin. This we might be able to do, actually. And that's 3 tourists. All they want is a suborbital spaceflight? We can do that. I'm going to accept both of these. We didn't get an advance for any of them, for either of them. Okay. That's fine. We're going to do both of those, and I think we're just going to bring Valentina back home immediately and take the science. And then we will run our commercial contracts next episode. We'll have to make a new spacecraft for that, but that's okay. So we'll just go ahead and pop over to retrograde. We're pretty circularized right now. So I'm completely okay with... I want to make sure that we have all of our data here. Yes, we do. I'm completely okay with just dropping this down to around 25k. 22 is close enough. So we will sit retrograde, and we'll go ahead and warp forward here until we enter the atmosphere, which is right now. So we'll just bring Valentina on home, and I would like to close the doors on the Science Junior. And then we'll get those tourists done to make ourselves some money so that we can go after the moon, because I definitely want to have missions, or mission planning for that. Now, I have done moon flybys without the mission planning before, but pass on that, the way this is going so far. Okay, Valentina. Hold that retrograde marker. I actually want to be on surface retrograde, so go ahead and hold that, Valentina. Excellent. We will go ahead and physics warp and see how she's doing holding that. She's doing great. Much better than me. I mean, what can I say? I'm not a pilot. Excellent. And we are continuing to accelerate, but we are going to start dropping through the atmosphere pretty quickly here. We're just physics warping until we see a problem that needs to be addressed. Physics warp, of course, can create problems. As of right now, I'm not seeing any, though. So we will just continue our deceleration here. We're down to an apoapsis height of 15 kilometers already. So that's great. Valentina's holding attitude like a boss. 10 kilometers periapsis height. 5 kilometers. We are on a landing trajectory. We're decelerating. I don't like physics warping through this portion, because if we lose attitude, which can happen, it's not a good thing. However, with Valentina at the helm, rather than me at the helm, we should be in a reasonable situation here. And we're starting to decelerate decently. So at this point, with Valentina at the helm, if we start losing attitude, or if we see a heating bar, the correct thing for me to do is to hit the Z button. And that's all I'm doing right now, is I'm currently positioned for hitting the Z button to throttle up our gimbaling engine. And if necessary, we will, of course, do a re-entry burn. Air brakes might not be the worst concept to have on this stage, but for right now, I don't think that that's necessary. We're going to be coming down apparently in grasslands. I'm looking ahead a bit here, and I think that it may end up definitely being a land landing, looking at that. Yeah, let's go ahead and hop out here. Yeah, that's certainly going to be a land landing. That's okay. We are just fine on land or water. We see a heating bar, and so we burn off some fuel here. I'm going to burn down to about 400 meters per second left. Good enough. Heating bar is gone. So there's our re-entry burn done. And the next question, of course, is, do we need a second re-entry burn? We're slowing down pretty dramatically here. I don't think we're going to need one. Like, we're still quite high up. We should definitely be in radar altitude, though. Yeah, overall, this is looking decent. Valentina did lose attitude. Okay, that's good to know. That means that we're not particularly aerodynamically stable with this here. We're looking okay, I think. I did try to do a little bit of a burn there for gimbaling purposes, but it's okay. This is kind of our re-entry profile at this point. We've got kind of a belly flop thing going on. I'm going to go ahead and turn SAS off. It is no longer important. Not going to be staging that decoupler. And drogue shoots to pull us to retrograde. Fantastic. Enjoy your G-forces there, Valentina. She seems fine with it, honestly. And main shoot. And now, down we go. We are going to need an EVA report before we land. That's fine. And we'll go ahead and allow our chutes to open up. There's one. Or rather, our drogue chutes have opened. And our main is opening now. Okay, let's have Valentina hop out. Grab the EVA report. And hop in. Fantastic. We'll now warp down towards the ground a little bit under the parachutes. Where's our time to impact? There it is. Okay. That's not exactly accurate because of the parachutes, of course, but that's okay. We are about a few seconds from impact. I'm going to start this burn at about 2 seconds from impact, according to KER. Glorious. We're going to tip over. Well, that wasn't ideal. So much for the Science Junior. We already had the data, though, I think. Right? We collected that? I'm pretty sure we definitely collected that data. So losing the Science Junior doesn't matter. That tip over, that's a thing that happens sometimes. We'll go ahead and recover that. It may not have happened, by the way, if I had had SAS on there. But we'll never know. We will never know. We will have to recover that debris separately, though, and that's okay. So we will go ahead and get this back. That's 34.6 science, sure, as well as a little bit of funding. And then we'll hop into the tracking station. And apparently there is no debris. I guess because it was close enough, it was considered part of it? Okay. We'll take that, I guess. Sure. And with that, it is time to put a cut in here. Next episode, we are going to start up our tourism business. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.